waiting for a man who says he's going to blow the lid off the secrets of the religion of the stars, to tell the story of the dark side of the Church of Scientology.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back. Amy and I are here once again to discuss a new topic. Hi, Amy.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Mike.
It's always a pleasure to see your smiling face sitting there.
At least we're smiling nowadays.
I know. Even though the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is not really a smiley face kind of topic, but you know, and just for the world to know, Amy was the one that came up with this as, I think we should talk about Too Gruesome. And I went, that's an interesting idea. Too Gruesome. It doesn't mean much to the outside world, I guess, but in Scientology, it's really significant. It's like a term of art in Scientology. It's an expression that has taken on a particular meaning in Scientology. And Amy kindly pulled up the definition from Merriam-Webster's of the word gruesome, which is inspiring horror or repulsion, grisly. And synonyms include hideous, shocking, atrocious, frightful, and monstrous. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because this Hubbard concept, or Hubbard concepts that sort of begin with this too gruesome idea and are expanded out a little bit in other writings, are the basis for what is a culture of violence in Scientology, particularly in the Sea Org. The Sea Org is a culture of violence, both physical and mental violence. And I don't even call it mental abuse. It's like torture, mental torture.
Yep.
So,
and the way they use the too gruesome, it's a noun in Scientology. It's like, give him a too gruesome. It's a noun.
Exactly. Too gruesome. It's like two words, one noun. A typical Scientology, what do you call that? An appropriation of words that get converted into something that means a little different in Scientology lingo. A lot of verbs get turned into nouns, nouns get turned into verbs. It's like all a bit weird, actually. But let's start off with the fundamental Hubbard policy letter from which the term actually comes. And this is a policy letter written on the 5th of January, 1968. And 1968 is a big year in the world of Scientology, but we'll get on to that. You can see down here, it says, therefore, to remedy this situation when things aren't going well, executives are being overloaded by their juniors, blah, 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 blah.
I didn't get that in there.
He says, the answer is to, in all caps, make the penalties for non-compliance and false reports too gruesome to be faced and enforce them. And this is exactly how executives in Scientology go about dealing with what they call flaps, problems, things not going good, expansion not happening. It's always the fault of someone, and that someone is always someone junior to you. You never point the finger upward in Scientology. That's like a really, really bad thing to do. You want to, but you don't, because you know that that's a sort of a death wish.
Often you actually should.
Exactly. But this idea of making things penalties and non-compliance to the penalties for non-compliance or not doing your job too gruesome to confront has taken on I don't know how to describe it, Amy. Some very, very weird very weird aspects to it over
very
time.
Creative, totally creative on how to punish people. And the other thing to understand is that especially in the Sea Organization, you're always on an emergency footing. Everything's an emergency. And if you're just not burning the midnight oil and working around the clock and making the time targets that are set, this too gruesome thing is just flat out in operation. So it's always being used, and you have to like memorize that policy letter and utilize it at all times. So it's not just occasionally, it's all the time.
Right. And then further on in 1968, Mr. Hubbard, in his infinite wisdom, wrote another policy letter. And remember, policy letters are the laws of Scientology. That is the laws of the administration of Scientology. And he says, among many other things, men will keep the accounts straight only because you can muster bayonets to enforce that they do. And as an executive, you get compliance because you have ethics presence and persistence and can get mad.
Muster the bayonets. That's the other thing we used to say.
Yep. Muster the bayonets.
People need to be prodded, and you can't just do your job. It has to be nonstop. Muster the bayonets, because you only can get compliance, because L. Ron Hubbard said that, is if you muster the bayonets. Mike, you're muted.
I know. I just unmuted myself again. Am I okay?
Yeah.
I don't know what happens to this thing. It's very strange. It seems like sometimes when I pull up these documents onto the screen,
Yeah,
like
that's
I've
funny.
got, like they said, I've got technothetans in my computer. ETs.
Running havoc. You need to muster the bayonets, man.
It's not BTs, it's TTs. Technothetans. in my computer. In any event, I lost what I was going to say, because I was going to make a point here about every executive in Scientology believes that it is their duty to find someone to blame for when something is not gone well. And like I said, that's always someone below you, not someone above you. And the more vicious, I have to reselect my microphone again. Hold on. Apostate Alex is telling me I have to reselect my microphone again because it's defaulted out of my good microphone. And he's right, but when I try and reconnect, it won't allow me to. So
sometimes you unplug the USB and then plug it back in and it reconnects.
I know. I'm trying it at the other end.
Sometimes that doesn't work. You have to do it in the computer end.
I've got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Here's hoping. Keep me, Amy.
What you should do is you should print out those documents you're going to read to flip them onto your screen.
Well, then nobody can see them. I've got them printed out here in case I can't read them on the screen.
I see. When you put them up on the. Oh, okay. I don't know why.
I don't know. It's weird. Yeah. Anyway, we're still alive. Things are still happening here. And I was going to say that I wanted to communicate the idea that there is sort of a moray or an accepted way of behaving in the Sea Org, particularly at the higher echelons of Scientology and at the higher echelons of organizations of Scientology, that the more vicious you can be to those who are underneath you and who are answerable to you, and more you can blame them, the more successful you are and the more your bosses see you as someone who is doing their job properly. And there are some kind of magnificent examples of people who were super skilled at this in the Sea Org and at the InBase. Like Lisa Schroer was an absolute master at being vicious to her juniors in order to make herself look good to David Miscavige. So was Jenny Linson, another one who was like a master at this. It was like an art form almost of how you go about surviving in that environment. And
the loudest decibel as possible, screaming.
Yes. And yes. And doing and calling people the most revolting, disgusting things, and humiliating them and blaming them for stuff that they had nothing to do with, and they have absolutely no ability to be able to respond. And we're going to get to this sort of further along, but that is part of the mental torture that goes on in making this too gruesome. You will be subjected to this humiliation, and there was plenty of physical stuff, but you'll be subjected to humiliation and being put down and disgraced and cursed at and all of this sort of stuff. And it's just pretty nasty and pretty vicious. But let's get to the physical stuff. Because you had a point that Jeff Hawkins had talked about from 1968 when those policy letters came out, and I had mentioned 68 was a big year for Scientology. It was the year of heavy ethics. It really was. There were a lot of things that happened that we're not going to go into all the details about, but 1968 started a sort of a kick from Hubbard on the Apollo that filtered its way down through these policy letters. But on the Apollo, you pulled up a quote, Amy, that Jeff wrote on his blog. You want to read that? Read it?
Yeah, sure. So he had just read my book, and I talk about two gruesomes in my book, Scientology Abuse, at the top. And he wrote a blog post about it. And in here, he says, I well remember the arrival of a Sea Org mission in 1968, where I was working in Pubs Org, Denmark. We soon had our own overboardings, buckets of icy water thrown at staff by a firing squad, running laps up and down the stairs, and non-compliant people imprisoned in the elevator shaft. The stench of fear permeated the place. It was, in a word, gruesome.
Yeah. It was. And that was the era of what was called the Liability Cruise, where Hubbard said that the Apollo was all in liability, and he went off and went into some villa in France and sent Mary Sue and the Apollo crew off to confront the two gruesome. They went on this cruise where they were all wearing rags. I mean, it was just like completely over the top. But let's get to the next policy letter, because this idea of, heavy pressure and threats and even physical abuse of people didn't sort of come up in 1968 and then vanish. It stayed that way. And in 1982, one of the last sort of very well-known policies that Hubbard wrote is a policy called knowledge reports. And in the knowledge reports policy, he says this: the single most notable difference between an upstat, easy to live and work with group and a downstat, hard to live and work with group, is that the individual group members themselves enforce the action and mores of the group. That is the difference, no other. In an upstat group, at the first pinprick, Joe would probably have a black eye. Now, anybody who has ever been in Scientology, and particularly the people in the Sea Org, know that you take the words of L. Ron Hubbard literally. And this is what started happening. People at the InBase started going, hey, the Commodore says that if someone just did a pinprick in an upstat group, which we of course are, they'd have a black eye. So it's about time we started handing out some black eyes. And this black eye quote is used constantly to justify the abuse and physical violence against people at the InBase and then at other places in the Scientology world. And let me just give you another one, which is a flag order specifically for Sea Org members that says it is of exactly no concern whatever that two staff members or SO members clash in trying to do their jobs. If physical violence were to result, then damaging an SO member might possibly be charged if any serious damage occurred. That two people are cross with each other is of no consequence whatever. It is not a legitimate zone for any ethics or executive interference. I'm sure it doesn't take a genius to figure out how that got interpreted.
Oh gosh, we laugh at it, but boy, you know, these were deadly serious in there. And it's so good to just kind of be detached a little bit because you can see it for the insanity that it is.
I know, Amy. I know. You look back and you go, oh my God. This really, I mean, I have described life at the InBase and particularly after the formation of the whole as being closely analogous to Lord of the Flies, where I don't know if you've read that book, but it's a very interesting book about how, you know, a group of people descend into physical and mental violence and abuse against one another in order to what they believe survive. And that is what Scientology descended to at the InBase. And I pulled up one other thing that I wanted to mention before we go into some of the details and tell our little stories, Amy. But that was the fact that this is not something that Sea Org members are ashamed of. This is not something that people in like the InBase think is wrong. They think that this is the way to save the planet.
Yeah.
So much. What?
Yeah, they're proud of it.
I know. So much so that when Joe Childs and Tom Tobin were doing their Truth Rundown series in the then St. Pete Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, they asked Tommy Davis about some of the reports of the violence that had occurred at the international base. And they quote Tommy Davis in their article as saying, church spokesmen confirmed that managers are ordered into pools and assembled for group confessions. It's part of the, quote, ecclesiastical justice, unquote, system the church imposes on poor performers. Rinder and the other defectors couldn't cut it in the tough world of Scientology Sea Org, a group whose members dedicate their lives to service of the church says. Rather than accept their own failings, the defectors are putting a sinister twist on something that is normal.
Oh, for God's sake.
The Sea Org is a, quote, crew of tough sons of bitches, said church spokesman Tommy Davis, an 18-year veteran of the group who blew. Quote, the Sea Org is not a democracy. The members of it agree with a man named L. Ron Hubbard. They abide by his policies, and we follow it to the T, to the letter, to the punctuation marks. And if you disagree with that and you don't like it, you don't belong, then you leave. Old tough man Tommy, who left several times and eventually left altogether, but is too cowardly to talk about what actually happened there, and still continues to toe the party line for Scientology, supporting and defending Scientology. You know, what a wuss. What an absolute wuss that guy is.
The letter to the T. See, they're like very proud of it. So if he says, you know, black eye, that means black eye.
Yes. That's what I was saying, Amy. And that's why I thought that quote was so great, because it's not you and me saying it. This is the spokesperson for Scientology telling the media, oh yeah, we just do exactly what it says.
Yeah, we do overboards. We throw people into cesspools.
Yep. So you made a bit of a list that I added to, where we were just going to tell people about what some of these two gruesomes were at the InBase. And there's some pretty
fun ones in here. I mean, this will give you a little bit of an idea, but like I'll tell you one. I was on the Rehabilitation Project Force, RPF, at the InBase, and this was 1984. And all we were doing was working around the clock trying to build the house for L. Ron Hubbard, and never sleeping. And so I was the deputy bosun in charge of the decks, you know, whatever. Anyway, hate to get into all that because it's stupid anyway. But I was in charge of half of the production, and then other people were, you know, responsible for certain parts of the production. And a person named Wendell was on the RPF with me. And after like so many days of being up, he gave me a back rub during a production meeting. Okay, so word of this somehow got to Miscavige, probably because maybe he confessed that he had thoughts about me or something. I don't know. But somehow, and he was under a microscope because he had just got busted to the Rehabilitation Project Force from the International Finance Director, you know, so he was being watched. So word got to Miscavige, and then all of a sudden Wendell and I are assigned to this leach field on the property that was basically a lake, because the septic tank was broken and it was all backed up. And so the order was for us to drain it, dig it up, and white glove it. So he and I are out there with buckets and trying to drain this entire lake. And we got the stupid thing dug up. But that was just an example of we needed too gruesome. And another one that I was going to tell you is another time I was on the Rehabilitation Project Force, on the RPF's RPF, which when you get in trouble when you're on the RPF, you go to the RPF, and it's like a mandatory 2 weeks of punishment and all this. So out at Happy Valley, they had a huge garbage dump, and it was, instead of taking everything to the garbage dump for like 2 years, it accumulated into a mountain. I mean, it was a mountain of garbage, and it was mainly galley stuff. So it was rotten, infested, maggot-filled, slimy, wet, broken bags of garbage, a mountain of it. And so me and another guy, Damien, had to load up dump trucks, and then somebody was taking it down to the actual dump. And so this guy, the guy that I did it with, was such a jerk. He was flinging those bags that were opening as he was flinging them, and the juice is just
oh God.
I said, it's just hell on earth. I'm freaking in it right now. I mean, we're up to our knees crawling this stuff. Anyway, so that was another one. And another thing that they did at the base a lot, whenever for non-compliance or whatever, was throwing people into the lake. And it had leeches, and it wasn't clean, and it had bottle caps on the bottom and things like that. I once sadly ordered my junior to get thrown in the lake. It was the one and only time I did it, and she came back with a cut foot because and you're in your uniform, you know, but she took her shoes off. Should have kept her shoes on. No, and she cut her Laurence. She was my
a lot of people kept their shoes on, Amy, but the problem with keeping your shoes on was that you only had one pair of shoes. And so
you're waterlogged.
Now you got these waterlogged shoes and socks that you're wandering around in to go with your waterlogged pants and your waterlogged shirt. And, a lot of this happened in the wintertime, and everybody thinks that this is the desert and, gold is described as being in the desert. And it is very hot there in the summertime. It's like 110 degrees some days. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in the wintertime, it freezes sometimes. Yeah. It's like high altitude, high desert, not down by the seaside where it stays, 50 or 60. Mm-hmm. It can get really cold. You come out in the morning, the entire grounds are covered in frost, and you're getting thrown in the pool in the lake at midnight. Yeah. It's not a pleasant experience, I promise you.
No, you can't see.
it's pretty shitty. And this is and it is accompanied by this statement that Hubbard made when he began overboarding people on the Apollo, which is where this came from. They would have their hands tied with, they weren't like tied in handcuffs. They were tied in a thing that you're supposed to be able to untie relatively easily, but they'd have their hands tied and literally be thrown overboard. And there was some little saying that went along, commit your
sins to the deep
to the deep and rise a better Thetan,
a better person. Yeah. I had a friend who told me that because wherever they were in the Sea Org, they didn't have a body of water like to get thrown overboard in the ship or a pond or a lake or mud puddle. So they used a toilet. They actually pushed their head into the toilet and said, cast your sins deep and come up a better person. So they think they're applying the policy by doing that.
Oh, that is so funny. And so you talked about the septic pond. Do you know when I was the COCMO Miscavige ordered the entirety of CMON to go to the sewage retention pond, which is slightly different, but it was that big dry square place where the raw sewage would just get pumped out, like out on the back of the property.
By the castle or something?
But beyond the castle, yeah. Mm-hmm. Over further out beyond the castle. It was just that big flat area, and it would just spray the old sewage water out there. It would evaporate and eventually dry out. He told us to go out there and clean out the retention pond. The retention pond was like 100 yards square with our hands for absolutely no purpose. I mean, there was no use.
No, it's a too gruesome.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
No purpose at all. I didn't need a white glove, a septic tank. Come on, no purpose.
Exactly what it was. Like I have had to dig ditches to nowhere, like just for the sake of digging a ditch. Mm-hmm. Like not because it had any purpose. No pipe was laid in it. Later on, I had to go back and fill it back in. That was the too gruesome. And
he had people like breaking bricks or something. Just pounding and breaking bricks. I mean, no reason, just to wear you out and to degrade you. Another thing, like that he had us do one time was run around. Like it's like so unbelievable when I say these things. We had to run around a pole in our uniforms, the whole organization, all the executives of the executive strata and the watchdog committee. We all went down and we had to run around this pole until we had a group cognition or realization, and which was acceptable to David Miscavige. And so he had his enforcer, Greg Wilhair, down there. And we were just running around this thing. But we were supposed to be silent, but meantime, we're supposed to have a group cognition. How's that work? So I was like quietly going around like, hey, maybe we should like make something up. And so John Horwich became kind of our spokesperson. And so he he went and talked to Greg Wilhair, and he came back and I said, well, what'd you tell him that we realized? He goes, I told him we didn't realize nothing. This is bullshit.
That's so typical of John.
You're gonna do this for hours more, you know. Yeah, he goes, I realized nothing.
Well, that running around the pole had come from originally, I can't remember if it was really Janice or David Mayo that were the start of the running program, one or the other. I always thought it was Mayo, but Janice told me when I saw her, you know, I was the first person that LRH ordered to run around a pole, run around a tree.
I think it was a tree from Mayo, and he basically said, until you can't see the top of his head, like
right.
just keep going and going.
He did wear a but that is what they now sell to Scientology parishioners as the cause resurgence rundown. You pay $5,000 to run around in circles and run around a pole until you have a realization. And then when you're done with it, a couple of months later, you can come back and do it again. Have another realization. You can, as long as you got your $5,000, you can just keep running around in circles.
I did that stupid thing, and I kept trying to guess. And like, okay, so this is my realization.
What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say?
Somebody told me you're supposed to become cause. Okay, I am so cause.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, do you remember? I don't know if you were ever there. Well, I mean, we got ordered to go run around that dam, and it wasn't a pole; it was a palm tree at that point.
On in the middle of a running track.
Right. Were you ever there when Debbie Hughes was being pushed around in a wheelchair?
What happened was the executives. So I told you about that original time when John Horwitz didn't realize anything, and so we were there for the rest of the night. But then again, later I was assigned to do heavy manual labor, and from a distance I could see that all the executives were down there going around the stupid tree again, and I saw Debbie Hughes being pushed around in a wheelchair. And then I was like, I asked somebody, what the hell was that all about? And they said she had a diabetic fit while she was running around. And so one of the Scientology technical things is what turns it on will turn it off. So if your diabetic epilepsy turned on while running around the pole, we're going to continue to push you around the damn thing until it turns off.
Yep.
Or until you die.
Yeah. One day I'm going to tell the story of Debbie Hughes and her eventual departure from the InBase, because it is horrifying. It is horrifying what happened to her. She and Greg have never spoken up about what happened, but it was terrible. And she was in such bad physical condition that basically they were forced to send her for medical attention to specialists in Beverly Hills because she'd been so abused in the hole when she had very serious diabetes and whatever. Anyway, yeah. We'll get to it one day.
And that's when it gets like, it's abusive, but it's also dangerous. They're dangerous. It's not just little irritating things. It's like dangerous, especially when it comes to Miscavige and his orders, because it's sadistic, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of the It's Got Nothing to Do with Me club.
I was in that club.
Oh, me too.
Oh, you were?
Oh yeah. I was in every club, Amy. I was a clubbing kind of guy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The Nothing to Do with Me club.
Oh, and the badges.
Okay, so now there's a story with that. David Miscavige always said that he was wearing every hat on the entire base, and so he actually made
up doing everybody's job for
everybody's job. Like, what's your hat? My hat was, watchdog committee member for a certain area. So he was saying he was wearing my hat. So he made up actual hats with everybody's job title on it, like hundreds, and put them all on display down at the mess hall, basically. And there's hundreds of them. And every single person had to be in a condition, and a low condition, and work to get their hat back from him. They all had to write CSW, a petition to get their hat back from him. And in the watchdog committee, he made up this tag that said, "We wee in bright pink, and he made certain executives wear it because, they weren't doing their job, and it was just, sending up things to him like wee instead of it being a completed product, apparently. So when I saw it, I said, wow, that's bright. And he said, well, you haven't seen nothing yet. You think this is bright? Just wait. So the next time I see him, he's got probably, I don't know, 30 different sayings on neon colored tags. Is this okay? Question mark, all these different things. And I was made to wear every single one of these things like a campaign bar all the way down my chest. Orange, green, yellow, all like a clown, all the way down, tape them all together. And I couldn't take it off. I had to wear it everywhere I went. I couldn't take it off until I got it approved by him. And then, of course, all the other executives started having to get them too. So I wasn't alone, but I finally did get them off.
Yeah, although those sort of things were sort of fads. They would come and go, and when it didn't work and nothing really changed, eventually they'd just sort of fall into disuse, or there'd be some new order issued. Oh, now you got to wear, a plate on your face. So the name tags went away. So now we got the plates. And
so the pie face thing came about because, he could do all these kind of things and we would just go with it. We were so numb to his things, and no matter how much he ratcheted it up, we were like, it's like a frog in hot water. It can just get hotter and hotter and hotter, and we're just like and so that's why he called us pie faces, because we just had to no reaction.
Right. Well, because any reaction you had was the wrong reaction.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you responded with yes sir, blah blah, then it would be, oh, look at this guy, he's just like trying to suck up to me. Or if you said no, or if you took too long, or your facial expression was wrong. So everybody started, and he always claimed that I was the biggest proponent of this, which was to just sit and go.
You were the ultimate pie face.
I was the ultimate pie face.
You just never slept.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I also was a little bit, I don't know, a little bit Australian, I guess. It kind of a bit comes with the ethnicity, I suppose. But there was a lot of other things that were done to people.
Oh yeah,
sleep deprivation is a monstrous crime that happens in the Sea Org.
I swear, I went 2 years with 4 hours, an average about 4 hours sleep a night, at least 2 years straight, when we were doing renovations on L. Ron Hubbard's house that he never came back to.
He's still coming, Amy. He's still coming.
Okay, well,
he's working things out. He's working things out.
Had a dead run, at least.
Yeah, I know. All of those projects all had to be done now. And then they'd all get fucked up because nobody's sleeping, and people are pouring concrete into holes that it's not supposed to be going into, and then it all has to be redone, and
people cutting off their fingers and all kinds of stuff. We just didn't sleep. It was around the clock, and it all had to be done tomorrow.
Yep.
But yeah, the anti-sleeping was a big, sleep deprivation was very huge. I'm surprised we came out with any brain cells left after.
I know. And also food deprivation, because I went for months literally eating rice and beans.
Yeah, so did I.
3 meals a day, 3 meals, 3 servings a day.
Yeah.
And that also is, debilitating. The thing that gets lost in this is when it goes on for so long, and the punishments and the two gruesomes become more and more sadistic, they just stop working. It just, and then that creates even more frustration. And then I got sent to go live in a pup tent on the golf course with Wendell, Jaeger, Heber, and Guillaume. Us. And when we didn't respond, and Miscavige took us out there in the middle of the night and said, you're getting picked up by a bus tomorrow and you'll be dropped off somewhere. You can go fend for yourselves. You're out of the Sea Org. We were all the senior executives of Scientology. And they're like, you're going. And here's a tent for you. I had Nori get a tent. And this is these 3 tiny little tents that we shared. And not only were we sleeping in the tent, he turned the damn sprinklers on in the middle of the night so that we would all get wet down. And it's like, how far can you go? And then eventually what happens is the May 9th event is coming up, and up rolls Dave on his, Yamaha TW200 with Lou in tow, screeches to a halt and says, okay, you fuckers, the assholes that are supposedly doing the event, it seems, are worse SPs than you. So you go back there and do the event. 2 days later, we're dressed up in tuxedos, standing in Ruth Eckerd Hall, delivering speeches for May 9th. This is how utterly insane this world is. And like you said, Amy, we just sort of accepted it. Like somehow or another, it's going to be better tomorrow or next week, or there's always this hope that something is going to change.
Like this is a temporary insanity, and the overall purpose is senior to that. So you're tough sons of bitches, like Tommy says.
Right.
Yeah. But there's other things. Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna take up several other things that would be done, but that's like secret. No meals, no birthing. There was this thing called the team share system at the InBase, which is, are you kidding me? This was Hubbard who wrote this.
Yes.
Which you would get a series of 5 cards, and then if you messed up, you would get a card pulled. Okay, so then it was just flipping cards all over the place. And your cards were like a social card, a chow card, a birthing card, and things like that. So
pay card. Yeah, there was a social card, which meant that you were able to attend events. There was a bonus card, which meant that theoretically you get bonuses if they were ever paid. There was a pay card, a chow card for your food, and a birthing card that allowed you the right to sleep in a bed.
That's right.
But they could all be taken away from you.
Yeah, they can be taken away from you. So if your chow card is pulled, you can only have rice and beans. And then if your birthing card is pulled, you have to sleep in the golf course, just out on where there's rattlesnakes out there. I'm sorry. I slept in really bad conditions. I mean, I slept in a high voltage room. I slept in this one electrical shack in a chair straight up because they didn't have any place for me to go. And I slept on the ice cold concrete floor I remember just crying. I was really tough, but it got to the point where it was just, my neck was so out that I was like walking like this. And this is what happens when you're in that kind of gross situation. But I wouldn't sleep on the golf course though, because of the rattlesnakes and spiders.
Yeah. They weren't worse than what was going on back in the buildings.
No, yeah. I probably should have. Probably be better. But the other thing is, like, things like you would get assigned to Gruesome, like scrub the dumpsters and the toilets with toothbrushes. They would read out your session withholds, like things that you got off a transgression that you confessed, that you would be made to stand up and announce them at musters, or they would just announce it and then post it on the notice board. They would do, so there's this thing called a non-interbulation order, which could be issued on you if you, it's like an ethics gradient that if you upset somebody one more time, you could be declared a suppressive person. So, so that would be hung over your head. Then you would be made to endlessly write your crimes and overts and withholds. One time, I wasn't even over this sector anymore, which was Scientology sector, but I had been previously, and the Tampa org didn't pay their rent. and it was $5,000, and it flapped up to international management that they did not pay their rent. And so Miscavige ordered that I pay $5,000. Okay, on my $11.25 a week. I didn't have that money, so, but I had to figure it out, and I went and collected it and then had paid people back and stuff and had to pay that rent. But that's like too gruesome for my non-compliance of, I obviously missed something about Tampa whenever I was responsible for every organization around the world. And let's see what else. One time we were in a meeting, this is a too gruesome, where Mark Yeager, who was the commanding officer of CMO International, Watchdog Committee chairman, and all the Watchdog Committee was there, and we were in a meeting with David Miscavige, which was routine. David Miscavige ordered it's the deputy commanding officer for internal, her name was Astra, to go get a buzzer, like a hair buzzer. And she did. And then he said, shave off Mark Yeager's head. So we're all sitting there in this meeting. She plugs this buzzer in and then starts zipping all of his hair off in the middle of the meeting. I mean, we're all sitting there kind of like horrified. He better not come around to me next, because I swear to God, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I mean,
and the reason that Astra was selected was not just because she was his direct junior, but because her parents owned a hairdressing salon in London.
Right.
And
is that right?
famous Scientology, quote, celebrity hairdressers. Astra subsequently, just like Tommy Davis, left the Sea Org and has never spoken a word about the things that she witnessed. She is another one in the Hall of Shame of ex-Sea Org members who don't have the courage to speak up about what they have witnessed and help prevent other people from having to suffer what they suffered themselves.
Yeah. Another thing that was routine in the Sea Org is if you got an inspection of your berthing and it wasn't a pass, you could get assigned to what they called pig's berthing. And that would be a room that had no air conditioning, no carpeting, mold on the walls, just a decrepit piece of crap. Or with a bunch of other people, no mattress or whatever, and you get stuck in pig's berthing until you can turn that place into something and get a pass and then go back into your own room. But that's another just too gruesome. There's so many. There's just so many. But I think those cover the main ones. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should start taking some questions. But I do, you kindly pulled this testimony from Debbie Cook from the court case. And I just want to cover that because this is not just me and Amy telling war stories. This is testimony that happened under oath in a court case in Texas where Scientology tried to sue Debbie and her husband Wayne. Debbie Cook was formerly the head of the Flag Service Organization, the largest Scientology organization on earth. She was a much loved and revered head of that organization for nearly 20 years. And she got sick and tired of what was going on. She was brought to the InBase. There's a long story of people who've been brought to the international base by Miscavige as the great saviors who were going to come. And pretty soon they end up like everybody else that was at the InBase in the hole, which is where Debbie ended up. And she had a little more integrity than some of the other people there. Miscavige was constantly claiming that Mark Yeager and Guillaume Leserve, the commanding officer of CMO International and the executive director international, two of the two most senior people in the Church of Scientology International, were engaged in homosexual relations constantly. I mean, he brought this up like, I don't know what, once a week, Amy, or more. Every time there's a meeting, he's making all these vulgar comments about wipe the cum off your lips from Guillaume's dick being in your mouth, and like just disgusting grotesque stuff.
You just can't even imagine how disgusting and vile.
Yeah, that was the
Dean, every meeting.
Nice version of
yeah. We won't even
did.
say the stuff that he said because it's just disgusting.
Right. But he walked into the room and he said, "You guys are going to get to the bottom of this once and for all in the hole," and pointed to all the crowd and said, "You better beat the shit out of these guys and get them to confess. And I'll be back and I want to hear." And he comes back, and I think it was Lisa Schroer says, "Oh, yes, sir, we got them to confess. They finally admitted it." And then he looked at Debbie and said, "Is that true?" And she said, "No." Okay, that was a huge thing for the people in the hole, because Miscavige then turned around and walked out, and everybody launched on Debbie. And they put her in a trash can. They put a sign around her neck which said, "I'm a lesbian." And the reason for that was because in Scientology theory, she must have, quote, similar overts of her own to not have noticed that Guillaume and Mark were in fact engaged in homosexual activities. When Scientology sued her, she testified. They made a big mistake, but she testified and
I'm so glad they did.
And said, "One time I was called into a conference room," and this was one of the other incidents. She talked about the trash can and that, but she said, "One time I was called into a conference room and asked some questions, and Miscavige ordered his secretary to slap me," his secretary being Larice. "And she slapped me so hard I fell over into the chairs. Another time, Miscavige ordered Larice to break Debbie's finger, who bent it back very hard, but didn't break it. Her lawyer, Ray Jeffrey, asked, 'When you were in Los Angeles with Mr. Ginga Nelson, what happened that you observed?'" And this came up in one of the chats the other night about someone licking the bathroom floor, and I said it was Mark Ginga Nelson. Debbie responded, "Mark did not agree with physical beatings or executives being locked up. He was beaten by Larice and Henning and Francois, two people from Golden Era Productions who were like Miscavige pets at the time, for a couple of hours. Then he was made to lick the bathroom floor clean for at least a half an hour." This is sort of the ultimate of too gruesome. And that's unfortunately the world of Scientology. And believe me, maybe there is no hole anymore, but these policies have not been canceled.
Right.
This is why we keep doing what we are doing, because we know that there are people there who used to be our friends who are being subjected to this shit every day. This is still life in the Sea Org. It has not changed. It can't change. Nobody's canceled Hubbard's policy letters. Nobody has taken Miscavige down so that he isn't directing what's going on. So it's all the same shit happening.
And then plus, like, when Marty told me this, and I think you told me some of this too, which was about walking on your knees in the hole. Like you were just made to walk on your knees. You have scars on your knees.
Crawl around the conference room table. And you remember the carpet that was in there was indoor-outdoor carpet.
Indoor-outdoor hard stuff, you know.
Right. So yeah, we had to crawl around. So I got, you get this sort of grazed burns on knees and hands. And that's okay for like not okay, but what happens is that when it gets repeated, you never get scabs forming. So you just keep going, like it starts getting wet and, like a graze does. And then you're back on your knees doing it again. And I do still have scars on my knees from that. They're like much less obvious now than they used to be, but.
Right. And the other thing he said was, I think it was Tom Vorm was sitting in a room and somebody took a fly swatter and was slapping him across the face with the fly swatter until his eyes were swollen shut and his cheeks were like out to here. And another one was Kurt Willen put in a freezing cold room with ice water poured over the top of him.
Okay, Amy, you remember the little conference room between?
Yes, I spent hundreds of hours in there getting interrogated.
Right above that were the AC units. And if you shut off all the other vents, you could blow cold air out one of those vents. Kurt was forced to sit in a chair and had water poured over his head. And he literally, I think he went into hypothermia. I saw this. Russ Bellum was doing it to him. He turned blue. Like his lips turned blue first. And then he was like shaking. I mean, it was literal physical torture, you know, like.
When I heard those things, I wrote to the FBI and I gave them all those specifics as well as any of the specifics that I had. And then they came out and interviewed me. This was in 2009. And
I did the same thing.
Anyway, I mean, it's that bad, guys. But that's why we continue to speak out, because they think that their religious exemption is justifying that they can do whatever they want to do, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. So these are people's children in there. These are family members of people still in there.
Yep. Okay, let's take some questions and comments, Amy.
Great.
Valerie Boljak. Hi, Amy. So glad to see you. You too, Mike. Go SPTV.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. M. Kaz. Mike, you once said that if something happened to DM, that Shelley would be the most likely to take over COS. If so, how would her sudden reappearance be explained, and what would her leadership look like? Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure that there would be any explanation. You don't need to explain things like that in Scientology. Literally, you tell people, okay, here's the new deal, and they just accept it. They are afraid to question things like that. That's why everybody's afraid to question, where is Shelley? If Shelley just reappeared, everybody would just go, oh, Shelley's back. She's in charge. Okay, what do you want us to do? And I think that unfortunately, though Shelley is not a sociopath like Dave, she is the product of being raised by L. Ron Hubbard and the policies of L. Ron Hubbard. And we've just laid out for you a number of those policies, and those things, you know, I think it would be a little kinder and gentler. The problem with Scientology is that it's not the people that are there running the thing that caused the problem. It's what the fundamental principles are upon which they run it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have anything?
I think that's right. No, I think that's exactly right.
Okay. Nicole the Kiwi. Hey, Mike and Amy, love from New Zealand. Love your videos. Keep up the great work.
Oh, I want to say, I'm starting my own channel as well, and all this information is going to be up there. And I want you to know what it's called. So if you search Amy Scoby, you'll find it. And I called it Who is Amy Scoby? And I called it that because Scientology owns like 12 websites on me, starting with, and the main one is whoisamyscoby.com. So my YouTube channel, I'm naming it in honor of that because they don't own me. And so you'll be able to find my content there. And there's a lot of things that we want to cover. So I want to share it both on my site as well as Mike's.
Yeah, Amy and I will probably start doing simulcasts. Next, you know, once I figure out how to do it, because right now Aaron and Mark are the ones that sort of organize that for us, but I'll figure it out, and Amy and I, because we figured that we're a pretty good team because we have such a history together of similar experiences and knowledge, and we kind of play off one another pretty well. So that's our thinking, at least. You can tell us if we're wrong. Okay, Deanna Ross. Now, Deanna, asked a question about Suzette the other night, and I was like not familiar who Deanna was. And Janice kindly sent me a picture of Deanna. On that little picture is from a shot of the front of the Apollo, or it may have even been the Royal Scotsman back then. Deanna was an early crew member, and her sister was Peaches Pook.
All right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
1968, the year of overboarding and chain locker. Great job, you two. Thanks, Deanna. Appreciate you coming along here. Danny I. Amy, were you in Florida when Challenger happened?
I was in California. Yeah. Him at base.
Kathleen Gleaves, super sticker. Thank you, Kathleen. Lisa Robinson, did LRH have policy letters for everything? Yes.
I think that's very
exactly.
true.
Down to how to wash windows, how to serve Coke, how to cook a steak, how to write invoices, how to wash cars, everything.
It was everything.
And if there wasn't a policy letter for it, there was an advice.
It was an advice. Yeah.
That was the secret communications that went only to international management or author services or one of the other senior organizations. Didn't have his name on it.
Didn't have his name. It had a star.
Signed with an asterisk.
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly M. Every time I drive by Gold Base, I live very close to Hammett, I yell, "Free Shelley," and flip off the cameras. Love the FCTV crew and keep up the good work. You too, Kelly. Keep up the good work. Okay, Kelly Copter. Looking forward to reading your book, Amy. Glad to see you both streaming. What's that?
I just emailed it to her.
Okay, good. Glad to see you both streaming again. Thank you for all the work that you do, XX.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amy is getting her book reprinted.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows, so you'll be able to order a hardback again.
It's going to actually
I mean a printed copy again.
Yeah,
it'll
printed copy. I think I'm going to do paperback, but we'll see.
Calico 26. Has there ever been a policy letter that is so out there that even Sea Org members don't follow? Is that even allowed? Any examples? Well, there's one that I can think of, and it's probably the last issue that Hubbard ever issued, and it's called Pain and Sex. I don't think that there are a whole lot of Sea Org members that follow that, because it basically says sex is no good. Sex is just a form of dramatizing being punished. I don't know. What do you think, Amy?
That was a stupid issue.
That's why I said it.
Yeah, no one kind of like brings it. I mean, sometimes I guess you would bring it up if something was going on with the individual or whatever, but we really just didn't even, that was too out there.
Right.
Also, there was like R245.
Oh, yeah.
Which was in a book, whatever. I don't think he was serious, was he?
I don't think so. But then again, he did say, they make them think that they've been hit like a Mack, like they were run over by a Mack truck. And I do not mean figuratively.
He said that, huh?
Yeah, wow, that's in like a 1954 bulletin called A Manual on the Dissemination of Scientology or something.
Wow. Yeah. The R245 is routine 2, number 45. And it's like, you take a 45 caliber gun to your head or something.
It's the perfect exteriorization process.
Exteriorization process, So no one tried that I know of. Right.
Okay. Adrian Crowfly, keep fighting the good fight. We will. We're here. We ain't going anywhere. The Mystery Cook. Hi, Mike. How's it going? I'm from Adelaide as well, and a big Sturt supporter. And I used to live near Pembroke School at 454 Glimburn Road. We were paisani. Okay, translation. I grew up in Adelaide. Sturt was the Australian rules football team that I supported when I was a kid. And I used to go to this Unley Oval to watch Sturt play. And the school that I went to is now called Pembroke School, but when I went to it, it was called King's College for Boys. And then it combined with its sister school called Girton, I think it was, and became Pembroke School. So there we go.
Well,
a little bit of my life story, although that's all in my book anyway. Okay, John, do you know if DM ever assaulted Tommy Davis? Yes. Nobody around DM that was in the sort of inner circle avoided being assaulted. Love you, Tuba. What exactly do Scientologists think they're going to save? They are doing to save the planet? Has anyone noticed that after decades, nothing has changed? That's a great question. This cognitive dissonance in Scientology is pretty outrageous. Forget about what they think they're doing to save the planet, because that's kind of easier to fudge in some ways. They show these videos of, oh, we're out here educating people in Africa and we're saving this. But they're all staged. What they can't really deal with is every person who went into a Scientology org. If every Scientologist went into a Scientology org tomorrow and asked to see how many clears they had made in the last year, the grand total for the entire planet Earth would be less than 1,000.
Oh my God, way less.
Yeah, I'm just being like really grandly over the top here, Amy.
Yeah.
And I keep pointing this out on my blog. They claim that they are clearing the planet. Yeah. There are 1,000 new people born every second.
I mean, it's less than walking around a Walmart center right now down the street.
Because they think that saving the planet means clearing the planet. So they are not even, they're going backwards. I've pointed this out many times. They were closer to clearing the planet in 1950 than they are now, because there was only 2.5 billion people left to go in 1950. Now there's 8.
Yeah.
So
sad.
Well, happy.
No, I mean, it's that kind of sad.
Yeah, I know. Sir Beelf. I admit mistakes were made. For what it's worth, we've been doing Fish Taco Fridays at Int since like 2010. I wish I was capable of having friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Cricket. Thank you. Super sticker. Denver Stevo. Blah, blah, blah. T-shirts will be coming. Catmandu. Super sticker. Thank you. Lily, so when Scientology loses its tax exemption, what do you think will become of all the properties they own? Foreclosure or forced to sell for the dollars? Okay, well, what I hope will happen is that Scientology ultimately will be forced to, Scientology needs to do, what do they call that? Reparations project or something? And pay back all the people in the Sea organization and staff for all the time that they have spent and devoted that they never got paid for, and return all funds to people that they stole from them, promising that they could have it back if they didn't take the services. Just give it all back. All the monies that they took from people off their account without their permission or through credit cards, etc., etc. And hopefully, in order to accomplish that, they would have to liquidate a bunch of properties so that they'd have enough money to go around to do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah S. Mike, from your book, I learned your daughter and I are the same age. Thinking of my dad, my heart breaks for you. I pray your kids will wake up and reconcile with you soon. Thank you for all you do to clear the planet from Scientology.
Right.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That's such a kind message. Okay, Lily's. Oh, we did that one. Sorry. Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn. Hi, Mike and Amy. Thank you for exposing these brutal policies and practices. If they lose their tax exemption, will they still have religious protection in the courts, or can these policies be exposed? I've described this a couple of times, Marilyn. It's a little complicated in the United States. The only government agency that issues any sort of religious, quote, recognition in the U.S. is the IRS, because it's basically precluded by the First Amendment from government entangling itself in the activities of religion, and thus they can't you can't really have government agencies saying this is or this isn't a valid religion. What you can have is the IRS saying you do or you don't qualify for tax exemption. That doesn't exactly say that you're a religion. You can not qualify for tax exempt status and be a religion because you don't meet the criteria that the IRS have laid out. On the other side of that equation is once you have been granted religious tax exemption by the IRS, it is sort of presumed by the courts that you are entitled to the protection under the First Amendment. So, yes, they would still theoretically have religious protection in the courts, but it's going to be a lot harder to convince people that that's the case, and particularly when they have to be transparent about their finances and everybody finds out how much money they spend hiring private investigators, creating smear sites, and generally attacking their enemies.
No.
Maria de Jesus Gutierrez. Mike, you said before that Hubbard created the false purpose rundown for you. What does that mean? P.S. He was psychotic. I'm so sorry you all had to endure it for no good reason. What that means is it wasn't just for me. I was one of the people. And he wrote a thing saying, yeah, you know, Rinda has got unhandled false purposes. So here's what we're going to do. And that was the kind of start of the false purpose rundown. That's a label that you can never get rid of. No matter how much false purpose rundown I had, I was still labeled by Hubbard as a person with false purposes and evil intentions.
Evil purposes. I mean, he says that it is written as cold as chrome steel, or cold, as hard as cold chrome steel. And so therefore, Rinder was evil.
Chi-Town native, truthfully, would you want to do too gruesome to DM?
And render him powerless. That's
the too gruesome for him. Kathmandu, I have relatives who would now be in their 70s who went up the bridge in the 80s and 90s, reaching OT8, one high-level CS. How much did they know? Well, it sort of depends where they were.
Yeah. Because as a public, if you go up the bridge, you're really kind of, no internal laundry is supposed to make it onto public lines, but
yeah.
I
don't know the answer to that, but I do know that people like that experienced not like the physical abuses, but the super high pressure sales techniques, and hard sell regging, and people being forced to pay for sec checking and all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty abusive in and of itself. It kind of gets lost in the picture of crazy sleeping on the golf course and cleaning out septic tanks with your fingers, but it's still pretty bad.
But she said one was a high level CS, so they probably, because they're doing that, they would have been, it depends on whose folders that she was looking at or he was looking at, because you would be forced to supervise people in certain ways to get their crimes or get their evil purposes, or a lot of pressure on that kind of thing too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mark Fisher. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
When do you recall the crazy ridicule started getting out of hand? Any event that caused it over the top? The flood was it for me.
Oh my gosh.
What year was that? Was that 99 or 2000?
Wasn't
no,
2000,
it was before that?
Yeah.
I wish Mark could just quickly type, because what I recall, the thing in my world that went put things completely over the top was Miscavige being pulled into the Lisa McPherson case. And then he was out in LA for the millennial event in December of 1999. And he started absolutely losing it out there. Marty and I were left in Tampa, having to call him up and tell him you're in the suit. And he started going absolutely nuts on people in LA. Janice just sent me a message saying flood, August 1990. Okay, so that was way before then, obviously, but in my world, in the OSA world, it started going absolutely nuts then.
Yeah. Oh, God. 1990 for the base was like such an incident. The flood, because that's when you knew that David Miscavige was a psychotic, raving madman.
Right.
Because nobody created the flood. I mean, it rained and it washed mud down the hill. So now we are all in confusion. You know, missions were fired to put us, like, if you were late for 1 second, you were sent to the rehabilitation project force. I mean, it was just intense, disgusting times. And it was that really went over the top, crazy. But you know, when it got really bad was after the IRS tax exempt status. That's when the way he treated us. I remember I was at Celebrity Center, and it was after the IRS recognition event in October. And I set up all of Celebrity Center, a beautiful event. And he came in, and I said, I'm so glad that you could come. And he pushed me away. And he said, you just want to get rid of me. And I thought, yeah, kind of. No, I didn't.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes, you know, I set up this whole entire thing, and I was trying to be gracious, and he's just got the biggest, fattest chip on his shoulder. It's disgusting.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. That was great. Nice to see you. Cat down the road. Hi, guys. Isn't Pie Face just TR0 though? I thought it was.
Without flinching.
Yep.
Yeah, but he's saying such outrageous things. He's trying to get a reaction. He wants a reaction.
My TRs were in.
Yes.
Summer Sun, super sticker. Thanks, Summer. Valerie, sleep deprivation is considered torture under the Geneva Conventions. That is exactly true. And it is, sleep deprivation is a major element in brainwashing.
Yeah.
Oracle 1, how such abuses can be allowed under the guise of it being protected by the law and governments because it's a religion. I couldn't agree with you more. It's insane.
It's what we're fighting.
And look, Amy and I are not the only people that have spoken about this. Every single person who has left the international base who has been willing to speak, and that's not every single person, as I said, there are a bunch of wusses out there that won't speak, have told exactly the same story, from Jeff Hawkins to Tom DeVock to John Brousseau to us to the Headleys. I mean,
Mark Fisher, Janice Grady,
Mark Fisher, Janice,
so many, Tori Magoo,
everybody. So, okay. Fifi Tinkerbell, I have epilepsy. DM is a sick in the head.
Yeah.
It's true.
I know.
Calico, I've seen Astra on Mark Bunker's channel.
Not the same Astra.
No, different.
That was Astra Woodcraft on
yes.
Bunker's.
Astra Woodcraft, another one who spoke out very early.
But it was Astra Parcell is who was the internal person.
She has another name now. Astra Croft, Croft, and Astra something or other else. I can't remember. John, do either of you have any stories about anyone from FCDC?
No, not me.
I have some stories from Dave Richards, but that's stories that Dave Richards told me about the times when he was in FCDC and the funny stuff that happened and the craziness of Bill Franks at FCDC. But I didn't have any real stories about FCDC myself. Sorry. Rhonda Petrie.
And FCDC stands for Founding Church of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Church of Scientology bought the vacant Baptist church in Florence, Kentucky. This is where I grew up and live not far from. Should the city be concerned? I know I am concerned that they are up to no good. Well, didn't they move into that vacant Baptist church in Florence, Kentucky? Isn't that where the ideal org is? I think so. That was where the source of Jeannie Franks and the Chase Wave began. The credit card scam. Ann Burrow, hello from Perth, Australia. Has anything changed in Oz about tax-exempt status? I know Nick Xenophon was working on this. Love to you both. Unfortunately, Anne, nothing has changed. There is an Australian High Court decision, which is like the Supreme Court, that basically says that Scientology is entitled to tax-exempt status in Australia. Okay. Jackie G. Amy, what was the final straw that made you say, I have to get out now?
Jackie. I know who this is. She's my friend. So what the final straw was, or let's see, I was in an ethics handling for my 800 billionth time. And this time I realized that what I was doing is rationalizing insanities. And as soon as I realized that, my brain stopped rationalizing, like the beatings and everything like that. I used to think, okay, well, he's got everything on his plate. That person deserved it. Too gruesome is a policy. Knowledge reports, black guy is a policy, all this stuff. And instead, when I realized I'm rationalizing actual insanities, my brain stopped doing it. And now I'm going, I don't agree with this. And then I became defiant, and then they sent me to the Rehabilitation Project Force, and then I met my husband, Matt Pesh, there, and we decided to get the hell out of Dodge.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great answer. Okay, Dave Voits, I have a solution to all of this. Been working this issue for a long time. Check out the King of the Hill episode titled Peggy's Fanfare. I'm calling my approach the Peggy Hill plagiarism trap. Wow, now that is an intriguing comment. Okay, I've got to go check out the Peggy's Fanfare King of the Hill episode and find out what this means, because I don't have a clue. Nope. All right, H4M Street Team. I know you laugh a lot, but retelling these stories must give you guys nightmares. Please know you're truly making a difference. Keep talking. Well, thank you. Honestly, it does not give me nightmares. It's somewhat, it's always somewhat cathartic to recount, like when we're not on doing YouTube, and Amy and Matt and Christy and I and whoever our buddies are around here get to sit down and chat amongst ourselves. It's generally very, very healthy. It's not
my favorite thing to do.
Well, maybe not quite.
But I'm kidding. Being with you guys is, but I still, like last night I had a dream, and Jenny DeVault was in it. Why is she always appearing in my dreams?
Because she's a bitch.
But
she's a screaming shrew. That's what they called her when she came to the parking lot. Okay, Jenny. Okay, Jenny, the original order on the running program was to have John Nelson and myself get out and run. The order was sent to David Mayo, who showed the order to me. At this point, there was no pole nor tree. A month or so later, when David Mayo was busted, the tree and then pole was added to the program. Thank you, Janice. Janice is an encyclopedic wealth of information about the Sea Org. She also has 2 books called Commodore's Messenger, Volume 1 and Volume 2, that are the encyclopedic reference of the history of the Sea Organization. So
and
if you ever know anything, go to Janice's book.
And she did a great interview on Erin's channel when she was here in Florida visiting. And I mean, I've known Janice for years and years and years and years, and I learned some really fun things from that interview.
N8 Gaming question: do they currently allow Sea Org members to carry smartphones? Probably not. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe a few do. Like when I was the COOSA, I had 2 BlackBerry phones because I had to be able to text back and forth to Mr. Mickiewicz at a moment's notice to inform him about what was going on. But that I was a rarity for sure.
Yeah, I never had one.
Laurie Plays, happy belated birthday, Mike. Amy, happy to see you streaming, and I'm especially happy you didn't give up on faith. Love to Mike and my sister Amy. Thank you, Laurie.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay, Carol Green, how do you think LRH would like how DM has ran Scientology? Enjoy watching SPTV. Keep up the great work. I think that he would be infuriated by how much external influences there are in Scientology today. I keep bringing this up on my blog about Hubbard rolling in his grave when you see events at the Flag land base that are being promoted by the Sea Org for public FSMs to come and do events to reg people at Flag or take their money. And this, like, Hubbard was enormously jealous and threatened by mission holders and field staff members and people with businesses. And like, the world of Scientology is so desperate to try and make money any way that it can. I think that is what would incense Hubbard more than anything.
How about the buildings? He said, don't purchase buildings.
Yeah, but he said that, but then, you know, the buildings exist and they're there and they've become assets. And so Sea Org Reserve's value has gone up, but
yeah, but they didn't do it. I mean, it wasn't delivery oriented. It was, you know, building oriented.
Yeah. Well, this is all hypothetical anyway. So
I know.
Shay Anderson, thank you both for denouncing anti-gay hate, especially you, Amy, having joined the Baptist tradition. Their history is not good.
I haven't joined any Baptist tradition.
There you go.
I have no labels, just so that everyone knows, other than child of God. And that's my only label that I accept. It's really funny how many labels can come at you in Scientology and outside of Scientology, and I really don't like any of them.
Right. I hear you. Okay, Theta Potato, Duchess of Chug. Oh, what a great name. Thank you, Mike and Amy, for your courage. Would you please explain why the FBI can't just go in and take everyone out? God, this is such a hard question to answer.
I know.
It takes so much.
I think
they can't because, yeah, we might want to talk about the FBI investigation at one point and what happened. They can't do that because of the requirements of the law. And, you know, I talked about it in my book too, the influence that Waco had. I don't know if any of you have watched the documentaries about Waco, but the absolute insanity of what happened there scared the United States government in entangling itself in any sort of organization. But realize, and I have told the FBI this, people inside Scientology look at the FBI as the devil. The FBI showing up and saying, come with us, it just isn't going to work. Those people will look at FBI agents and go, I'm not going with the enemy. I'm staying with my friends. I'm not going with the enemy. So that's the short answer that I can give you. It's
really
way more complicated.
But, you know, I really wish, because I know everybody at the InBase so well, I really wish that, like, if they individually could pull them out to talk to, like, me and you or something like that, because I feel like I would be able to reach them. I don't think just a law enforcement person coming in, it would be the enemy, but I know that I'm considered an enemy too, but I at least know the words to say and they know me. You know, I feel like I think about it often, but anyway, maybe they can use me one day. I don't know.
We will see.
Yeah.
Lathander Grocklinger. Hello from Germany, Mike. I just got your book from Audible. Thank you so much. Amy, is your book available as audio too? Prefer listening to books while crafting? It is, right?
Yeah, my book is on Kindle and audio, both on Amazon, and it's somebody else narrating it, but it's okay.
Ruth W. I adore and have much respect for both of you. Thank you, Ruth.
Good.
It's always nice to hear from people. A.K. Brenda Robert. I hope you both know how beautiful and valued you both are after being so poorly treated and humiliated. There are many more of us who appreciate you daily.
That's
Thank you
very
so
nice.
much.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay, Lisa Marchbanks, Dragonfish Handmade Goods. Amy's your book in audio. Very much love Mike, Mark's, and Leah's books.
Yes.
Just answered that one. Okay, we've got 6 more to go here.
Okay.
The Raffadaffadoo. Hi, Mike. In your book, you described Monique Yingling recognizing that COB was abusing you. What makes her tick? Money. Can't be at her age. Oh, can be at her age. Money absolutely makes Monique tick. And realize also there's this thing that I talked to John Atack about in the last interview that I did with him 3 days ago, but that hasn't aired yet, about the fallacy of sunk cost. And that is a sort of a fancy term for saying it's hard to admit you were wrong. It's hard to admit that you invested a lot of money or a lot of time or a lot of your credibility in something and then turn around and say, oh, I was duped. So I think that is a part of the problem with Monique. Jackie, I thought I was an expert in Scientology for a WOG. SPTV, keep educating. You may well be an expert for a WOG, Jackie. Good work. Not COB greater than COBS. Love it. Okay, let me think about this. Not COB is greater than COBS. Don't get it.
I don't get it.
Okay. JSS Tiger. There was an interview, Mike, you did about Lisa McPherson. Why did Scientology not get her help? Okay, another really long, complicated thing here, but Scientology, or the Scientologists that were involved with, quote, helping Lisa McPherson, thought they were helping her. That's really the biggest problem with the Lisa McPherson matter, is that those poor women who thought that they were nursing her back to good health, both physically and mentally, by applying the principles of L. Ron Hubbard in the introspection rundown, were doing the exact opposite. But they couldn't see it because Ron said that this is what you're supposed to do. So if Ron says this is what you're supposed to do, you just keep doing it no matter how bad things are going. And that's like the tragedy of Scientology in a nutshell.
That's another video, is type 3 watches. Type 3 is when somebody goes insane, and the way that they're treated. I mean, I've been sitting, put outside people's doors to make sure that they don't go out. And a lot of people have, my husband has too. And it's just a standard thing that a procedure that you do, which they should have no right to do when people are not in their right minds.
Yeah, well, as I wrote in my book, I was on the first watch, Bruce Welch. That's where the introspection came from. That's where the introspection rundown came from. I was newly on the Apollo, and so as the new guy, I got the short stick assignment, sitting outside Bruce Welch's cabin all night to make sure nobody made any noise.
Yeah.
Churzoc. Hi, Mike and Amy. Do either of you know the little blonde girl in the Golden Age of Tech video doing the Tiaza metering demo, wondering what happened to her? By the way, Amy, you rock. Do you know who that little girl is, Amy?
I'm trying to think of the video.
Karen Hollander's daughter.
Oh, really?
Yep. I think her name is Lauren.
She has 2 daughters. One is Lauren.
And I think it was the younger one of the two. And I don't know where she is. I would love to talk to her.
They left the Sea Org a while ago, a long time ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I didn't realize she was in that.
That video was the video that said, oh, the new Golden Age of Tech and the Golden Age of Tech drills are so foolproof and so simple, even a child can do them.
Oh gosh, that's,
you don't remember that video?
I do remember that. I didn't know it was Karen Hollander's kid.
Yeah, she was 11 years old.
Yeah, I totally
even
remember.
A child can do it. You can teach a child to be a perfect auditor now.
Yeah, I remember that.
Peace through cookies. M&A. Each truthful word you say equals chains breaking.
Yes, and
Thank you so
planting
much.
seeds, hopefully, and people who have family members in Scientology or have any sort of idea that they possibly would ever go into that organization.
Yep. 2 more. Matrix Tech Solutions. Hi, Mike. Just wanted to know if your book is still available autographed. Yes, it is. You can go to my blog, mikerindersblog.org, and order it there with a personalized message. I will write any message that you want. I've had some doozies that people have asked me for that were just absolutely, some of them very funny. So yeah, you can get it right there on my blog. Last one, Amy, just finished your book. So good. Stayed up all night to read from first word to the last.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
There you
Wow.
go, Amy.
That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
There you go. That's great. Well, thank you everybody for sticking with us for an hour and a half or more. And thank you for all your questions. We try to not just go to, super stickers and super chats, but put in some other stuff as well. And we enjoy the interaction. We enjoy hearing from people what you're interested in, hearing from you what you think is important, what you find useful and beneficial. And we will continue doing this for as long as we have a breath left, or until the organization of Scientology has no breath left. One way or the other, we're not going anywhere. And SPTV is taking off, and there's some really fascinating news coming up on that front. In addition to Amy starting her own channel now, but there is more news coming up on that front, and SPTV is becoming a real thing. I'm telling you. So thank you, Amy, for joining me once again.
Of course.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will announce when our next episode is going to be. Not sure when, but we'll let you know and what topic we're going to cover. Bye.
Bye.